It's done. He brought it up in the old Canada. So we did it.
Excellent idea.
We need that right now.
No.
Can we put a cover or something on it?
Yeah, good idea.
A little higher, so better than ours. That's a good idea.
Is that better or no? Yeah, exactly. Just maybe pull it back and put that
Just
down.
hit the power button.
Yeah,
That's good.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. To acknowledge the Smoky Valley of the learned work, organize traditions of the unceded territory of the Smoky people, and upholding our Smoky. Are we live? Yeah. Okay. Adoption of the agenda. Oh, I do have one addition before we do that. We're gonna add 9.1. James is gonna give a quick rundown on how taxes work. So, adoption of the agenda with the 9.1. Thank you, Councillor Gould, seconder. Councillor Willis, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Go down to 5.1, unfinished business, Southern Interior Local Government Association, SILGA. We're looking for resolutions. If council has any resolutions or things that we think we need to take to SILGA for resolutions, then if they're approved there, then they go to UBCM as a endorsed through SILGA. Anybody? This is open discussion, so just jump in.
Is there, are you aware if there's already going to be anything about forestry and change?
We have no resolutions at this time. This is just the beginning call, so we don't have any resolutions at SILGA.
Because I know that's coming down, that's quite a concern for a lot of communities.
Okay. Stumpage.
And old growth changes, which affects us greatly.
Okay. Anything else?
All I'm thinking is housing, flooding, and water.
So what are you thinking?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? Is I'm thinking those are the topics. I'm not too sure which direction to go on those. So.
Okay, so we had some last year that went to both SILGA and UBCM on that.
Right.
Do you want to duplicate those, or?
I would say that would be wise just to keep bringing them up to the forefront.
Okay. Do you want to come up with something and bring it back to us then?
Sure.
So something more concise.
Yeah, of course.
Because that's
yeah.
pretty broad.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I know it's just off the top of my head, but yes, I understand.
Okay, I'll put George.
You don't have anything?
Not at this point. Nothing that I can think of. What's the length of time we have?
Yeah, it says right in there. Yeah, near the end of Feb 24th. February 24th.
Well, it seems to me that things will come up during meetings that we have that we would pick. Yeah, we just. That seems to be something that we pass on. Yep. We just said at the last council meeting that we would send it to the committee of the whole in January, so that's why it's here. So if you guys come up with anything else, and just bring it to, you can just bring it to me, and then I'll have it added to the next agenda. We can work on something. Okay, if nothing else, we'll move on to staff reports. And we have a new legislative requirement for a code of conduct. Since Carrie's not here, I'm going to ask Lyle.
So this is a new legislative requirement for codes of conduct that came into force on June 13th of 2022. We have 6 months to, the word they use is consider. So that means look at, discuss, decide what we want to do. So we have till this coming June of 2023 to kind of put something together. Carrie did produce a nice little handout here, which helps us to sort of work through this. It's really, at this point, it's just an open discussion on how detailed you would like to go. I mean, the fact is we have to have something, or we have to have a reason why we don't want to have a code of conduct. But I suggest that we do have a code of conduct in place. And then I like the blue questions before you get started. It kind of helps us kind of put everyone on the same page, open discussion on what we want to see in it, how detailed, any punitive items that we want to put in there if someone breaks the rules. There are other code of conduct policies that we put in the package here, so you can kind of look at what other communities are doing. There also is a bit of an interest from communities within our valley to maybe do something that is the same. I'm not so sure I totally support that, because I think it's kind of got to be our own, you know. But anyway, it's just on the agenda for open discussion.
Anybody?
Yeah, I want to say that the example from Cranbrook I thought was quite concise. The one from the District of Saanich read like a real legal document, and I got lost halfway through it. But the Cranbrook one I thought was a really good start, at least, but I don't recall that I had anything in regard to enforcement.
No, that's right. And so that's a good discussion topic, is do we want that or not want that?
So there's a couple things we need to, I think, remember when we're doing these. One is there's certain legislative things that are already in place,
Yeah.
and putting them in our code of conduct makes it redundant, but also if the legislation itself changes that we already have to follow, I think is it them, the first one you mentioned, is it they have the, one of them has the gifts in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's already in legislation. So
Yeah.
putting,
Yeah, that was Saanich, yeah.
So
correct.
having that in there,
Yeah.
That's a
if
redundancy.
the legislation changes, then your code of conduct is automatically out of date, and then you have to change it anyway. So, keeping it more simple would be better. And then the other one you said was,
Cranbrook.
no,
Oh, the enforcement.
enforcement, sorry, I've
Yep.
had a rough morning. The enforcement part, we had a phone call conversation with the minister and his office, like in the summer last year. And there are some municipalities that are considering some very harsh penalties. Like, we're gonna remove you from this, and we're gonna take away your honorarium and all the rest of it. There's nowhere in the legislation that gives any ability to actually discipline short of taking away your committee rights. You cannot take away the other parts. So when the minister was questioned and the office was questioned on it, they said, well, that's gonna be up to the courts to decide. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, if we're considering that stuff, I would hold off too much, because there's gonna be lawsuits across the province to sort out what is gonna be allowed and what's not gonna be allowed. And I think we should take some of that, and then we could add that at a future date. I think the UBCM one is, like, their template is really good, and I think it keeps it to where we need to be. I mean,
Yeah, the working group document had spelled out a lot of enforcement, and like you said, like very extreme in
Yeah.
some cases, right? Just to get you thinking about it.
yeah,
And I would never expect it to go to that extreme here. You know, we need to do a made in Princeton version, right? I understand that. So, you know, you're right, sit down and find a common ground that works for everybody.
yeah,
Yeah, don't you think the size of us, you know, maybe we keep our simple.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think
I agree
the more
sometimes.
complicated we make it, the more complicated it's gonna become.
Sure.
I mean, we do have to take future people into consideration as well, but still.
Keep Randy in mind.
I think that what's coming out of the chair is that not working through deciding what it is, waiting till the legal system figures out what is allowed and what isn't allowed before we even bother touching on that stuff.
Yeah, I would just, personally, I would just say, we should adopt, like, the framework and the, you know, what we need to have in there, and then if we need to add stuff as it comes, then we add stuff as it comes, but we wait until there's legal precedent for it.
That's actually a really good approach, because it does say in the working group copy that it is to be considered a living document. So, yeah, then you can add to it if you need to, or adapt when needed.
Yeah.
Another thing I was suggesting is the draft that is here for the town principal.
Yep.
Is to add a section on this too.
Or before, or whatever.
That it is future reviewed.
Are you-
And that's within both sides.
Cranbrook.
Add a review period. Okay. We could even do it every couple of years. It doesn't even have to be very big, really.
I just think it's like the same legislation we changed.
Yeah, and, you know, I was a little, actually, I think everybody in that meeting was a little taken aback by, by the answer we got. I was like, well, the courts will figure that out. I was like, whoa, what do you mean? But I guess that's how you're gonna test your legislation, is through courts anyway, so.
I just like that there's the guiding principles in there, and then even that portion on, it's a little bit different between Cranbrook and Sandwich too about, online posting.
Yeah.
Yep.
And just that, as we've all talked about, discussed, like the motions made, it's agreed by council, regardless of what the vote was.
Yeah.
So I just like that, that's in there.
Okay. So do you like the draft that's currently?
I think it's to the point where they can review it, but it doesn't make you to consider it's not a finished document.
We've, since we've produced this agenda, we've gotten like 3 or 4 more examples to choose from. And so what I'm hearing is that you would like us to staff will continue to work on it, but we'll keep it kind of simple, and we'll add in a review process and whatever, and we'll bring something back to council.
Yep, good
Yeah.
idea.
Is there any other conversation on that?
Just that, there was that, my point, and we can share it.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, it takes about 20 minutes, half an hour to do. It's pretty simple. If you haven't taken it, you probably should. It was free. You get a little certificate afterwards. You can go in your personnel file, on your wall, whichever you want. Yes. Everybody has a personnel file. That's where your information is. Okay, with that, we'll move on to the draft delegation bylaw. Gary's not here, so CAO.
So, this is, the idea here, the intent here is to try and speed up the process up and to take a little bit of work off council's desk a little bit. And so this is simply an introduction of an idea to, other communities do this, to delegate some of the minor, and that's the key word, is minor development variance permit approvals, and push it down onto staff. So, and of course, in the proposed bylaw, or the draft here, there is criteria on what would have to look at. So, rather than, like, if someone needs to vary a fence line or whatever by 6 inches or whatever, rather than they put in an application and then we prepare a staff report and then we have to wait for a council meeting and then get a decision and go back, that, you know, it could take a month, you know. Something so simple like that, to speed the process up, staff could probably make that decision with criteria from council. So, I guess the idea is there an appetite of council to pursue that?
I like it, but I like it, because you're right, it does speed up the process
Yeah.
on a few things.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it's gonna take into consideration the things we always discuss, like if it was a fence, well, there's,
Yes, yeah,
so I would support it.
yeah, okay.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I think if it streamlines the operation, speeds it up for developers, I'm all for it.
Until we can figure out bylaws anyways, because we're gonna do that
Yeah.
in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Our zoning bylaw should be done this year, next year, hopefully, or the year after. We're hoping to start it this year. Anything else? You guys are good with it as it is, or do you want to add stuff, take away stuff?
I was just gonna say, if there's anything else that staff
Yeah, that's kind of, I mean, Carrie, this is Carrie's work, and she's done a lot of research with other communities, and this is kind of where it lands, so.
Because I know that last term council adopted like Cavalli suites and
Yeah.
carriage houses and stuff without having it kind of amended it to the US
Yeah,
side.
it's in the
So that's
zoning.
kind of what I see the intent of this as
Yes,
well,
yeah.
is to help with housing and help
Yeah.
increase it.
Yep.
If there's other things that you think
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole list. I mean, it talks about setbacks and coverage and height, you know, within a, you know, I think it's 10%. Off-street parking and loading spaces. So if someone has a secondary suite, then we can consider the parking regulations in-house here. Signs, we have a sign bylaw, but maybe someone's sign is like 3 inches bigger than it should be or whatever. That's something we can consider.
Or lit.
Yeah.
Lit.
Screening and landscaping, I mean, that's been discussed before, so, I mean, you know, it might be that, someone wants to build something, but, you know, maybe staff would suggest that there'd be some screening that would protect it. So.
And that there is an alternate process.
Yes, there is, that's
Yeah.
right, that's
Yeah,
another
there is.
point, yeah.
So that it's not like just car wash.
That's right, yeah.
And they can
so
always appeal.
They can always appeal, that's right, yeah.
Anything else? Anybody? You guys are quiet this morning? First committee of the whole of January? Okay, I think you got enough there for
Yep,
that?
yep.
No? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to 9.1. James, jump in on your explanation. of
I
taxes.
agree, James. Yeah.
I'm gonna scoot over here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, I was asked by council to put together a presentation on municipal taxation. Just how we derive it, how we come up with our numbers, and so there's a good solid grounding on how our methodology works. So I will just wait for the projector to do its thing. All right. Hopefully it'll do its thing. There we go. Okay. So I'll start off here with the budget itself. So you'll see on the budget, the first line item we have is municipal taxation. So when we do our assumptions for municipal taxation, we take our numbers from previous years and we figure out what there's going to be a multiplier. This is pretty much how we come up with every operational line item on this budget. How much are we going to bring in? How much are we going to spend? Current methodology, and the methodology I've had since I appeared in Princeton, is inflation rate plus 3. The inflation rate essentially being what we expect every line item to increase by, and so obviously if you're going to increase expenditures by the inflation rate, you naturally have to increase the taxation rate by the inflation rate to basically keep up with rising prices. In addition to that, the methodology has been to add 3% to that as a buffer to get reserves up to a certain level, so that if we did have some sort of calamity through the year, if we needed to hire a staff member who's left and the wage rate is more than it should be, if we had some sort of we purchased a service that needed to be staffed through the year, or had a subcontractor need to come in through the year, we had a reserve base, an operational reserve base, to be able to pay those kind of expenses. The plus 3 is what I've decided. It's completely up to council what that plus amount is. It could be plus 2, it could be plus 1, it could be plus 6, it could be minus 3. It doesn't. It's kind of an arbitrary number, but that's kind of what is decided at this point. That's the first step in this whole process. It's also important to note, the reason I brought this up, the mine taxation is capped at 3%. It cannot go above 3%. It can go below 3%, it cannot go above. So even though the inflation rate is at 7, the mine taxation rate is still capped at 3. That's done by letters patent, and to change that we'd need to contact the province, and the mine would probably be in consultation with that, and so on and so forth. The third line that is on here is the capital levy. That was approved through the alternate approval process last year. We need a certain amount of funds to be able to pay that by legislation. So because we took the loan, we have to pay for it. We told the province we'd pay for it through either a capital levy or a parcel tax. So that's why that is on there for 2023. So at the end of the day, my goal is to collect $4.209 million for municipal purposes. So I start with the budget. Then we work our way to a little bit more of the nuts and bolts.
Could I just ask, mine is obviously affected by assessment.
Yes, now we're going to get into how assessment governs that. That's this.
I know, I was just concerned just with the mine.
Yeah, that's how this one works. So once we have our budgetary assumptions completed, we move on to how assessment comes in and determines a mill rate for that. So we start off with last year's values. So you'll see in column B there, that's the assessment values from the previous year. Column C is the tax rates that were passed by council last year, and column D is the proceeds that we get, which is essentially the assessment value multiplied by the tax rate, which get that. So you'll see at the bottom here, it's we have a speaker blocking it, but I can scroll up. There we go. So we collected $3.371 million. It's down a little bit from where our budgetary assumptions were last year. It always is a little bit, when people appeal their taxes, we actually have to refund municipal taxes if they're successful in their appeals. Last year it cost a municipality approximately $209 because it was $3.372 for last year. The mine is removed from that. I'll explain why that is in a moment. And that is the taxation we receive without the mine taxation being applied to it. Okay? So then we have the 2023 numbers. These are what they call the completed roll from BC Assessment. So BC Assessment gives out 12 rolls a year, one per month. The first monthly roll is now. That's what appears on everyone's assessment notices. People have the month of January to apply for a appeal of their number. If they appeal, that's done in February, and into March if they appeal the first decision. That appeal starts again in March. By the end of March, BC Assessment has compiled all their numbers and put in what they call a revised roll, and that number is always it can have some significant differences between the column B and the column E that you see and the column E that they come up with at the end of March. So the reason that I largely warn people off of coming through and asking what their taxes are going to be in January is because this number can vary quite significantly. As I've told several people so far this year, it's very, very important that when you get that assessment notice in the mail, that you take a look at it, and the average increase in Princeton this year is 15%. So if yours is significantly above 15%, it's really incumbent on the homeowner to ask why. BC Assessment is great at explaining their methodology. They have a phone number, they have a website, bcassessment.ca, that people can go to, and they really do a good job in explaining. If you don't buy their explanation, you can appeal. The deadline is January 31st. It's free. It's fairly informal. It's done over the phone. And you can explain your situation to somebody who it doesn't work for BC Assessment. They work for the province.
The whole appeal's done on the phone?
The whole phone. It
So
doesn't
you
take
don't
that
have
long.
to go to Merit anymore?
No. The appeals are done by phone. And they make their decision pretty much on the spot, so you know whether you're correct or not. The next steps are a lot more onerous to appeal that, but there's 2 more appeals after that if you need to. But most people, if it's that far out of whack, and the first line that you call BC Assessment and actually get an explanation, usually if there's something that's really crazy, they can adjust it as well before it even gets to an appeal process. So that's the first step. You'll notice that the next line is non-market change. So when we compare 2023 to 2022, there are certain buildings that did not exist in 2022, and that is reflected in non-market change. So if your house existed in 2022 and it's relatively the same as it was in 2022, in 2023 it may have gained value, just based on the fact that it's a house. House prices went up 15% this year. That's not included in the non-market change. The non-market change is specifically for land or improvements that did not exist in 2022. It's hard to create land unless we do a boundary extension, so that's where non-market change is going to come with land. It's usually a boundary extension or something that didn't exist with the land base in 2022. For improvements, it's mostly new construction, or if something is rezoned. So if something is, their primary purpose last year was business or vacant land. So what we see a lot in Princeton right now is Class 6 land is at the industrial park because it has no designation. Once people start using it for industrial purposes, it reduces the Class 6 value and increases the Class 5 value that didn't exist last year. So that kind of non-market change often shows up between 6 and 5 for that purpose. But new construction and using for different purpose is largely the purpose of non-market change. So when we have this adjusted value on column G, that is the existing portion of what existed in 2022, adjusted for this year's increases. It's the 15% largely, not what got created in 2022. So your adjusted rate is basically the mill rate in 2022 adjusted for the fact that things have increased. So last year we have 2.52 for a Class 1 rate. This year we have a 2.19 rate to get us the same amount that we had in 2022. So it's essentially the 2022 rate with 2023 values. And as you can see, the amount that we derive is exactly the same as 2022. Any questions on that? Is that fairly straightforward? Okay, I'll carry on. It's heady stuff. That's why I don't want to I don't want to try and
Wait till Jim comes.
go faster. Jim's a fun guy. Fun guy.
Sifino for-
Yeah. So the non-market change in column J is the amount over and above what the 2022 assessment is based on the fact that it didn't exist in 2022. So it's quote unquote new stuff. So had the houses existed in 2022, we would have collected $23,929.34 more money on that in 2023 had it existed. We add those together to get the amount that would exist. So the 2023 column K adjusted tax is essentially the 2022 rate with the addition of the non-market change. So we've made a 0% tax rate this adjusted tax would be essentially what we sent out for municipal purposes. But we have the assumptions that we have to make for the budget. So we have a tax increase line, which essentially states what we have to do to increase. Oh, come on back. Sorry about this. Yeah. We have
You bored the projector
I bored the I'll try not to take that version. There we go. All right. Thank you, projector. So we have the tax increase line. So this is how much we have to increase to get to our budgetary expectations. So as I said before, the tax increase is in the budget. It's what we calculate in that budgetary line item to get to this point. So if we assume a 7% increase, we calculate this based on 7%. If it's a 10% increase to get what we need in the budget, it's a 10% increase. So because during the budget we did 10%, that's largely what the assumption turns out to be. It works out to be 9.97 exactly, but we always aim for what we approve in the budget through council.
A 10% increase is only, is that 125,000?
That's right. So for the residential purposes, it's 125. So as you notice back, if I back up a little bit, right.
So does this bump us up to 8 lowest in the product?
I won't know that for a little bit. So yeah, so that's a fairly good point. So 125,000, a 1% increase brings in roughly $12,595 to the municipality. A 1% increase to the residential rate. Now you'll notice down here in the aggregate, a 1% increase, a 10% increase garners $396,000. So a 1% increase overall garners $39,646.81, roughly. So once we take that increase into consideration, the last line we have here, so for municipal purposes, the plan is to bring in $3,305,999.99, which, if you notice in the budget, matches the $3.306 million that's on the budget. And usually we get within half of 1% of that number. Very close accuracy. BC Assessment is very good at valuing properties. Very rarely are they overturned over appeal. Like I said, last year, appeals cost the town about $209.
You had mentioned flooding, like how homes that were flooded or damaged, that they can appeal.
Yes, I'm going to get to that as part of at the end of my presentation. So you'll notice that the mine is still removed. The mine is not subject to the same increases as the rest of the municipality. They are limited to 3% by letters patent. So the mine doesn't have the same type of increases all the way through. You notice they stay at 12. They do have non-market change, but their base rate is always at 3%. Okay.
Have you been talking to other CFOs? Are they looking at the similar?
Yeah, everyone's sort of in that 8 to 10% ballpark. Summerland, I think, is looking at about 8 to 9, and everyone's kind of in their beginning processes, so it's difficult at this point to, I can't say everyone, this community's going to be at this community's going to be at that, this community's at this, because very few have actually passed their final budgets. Most are in first and second readings and doing public consultation. But it's mostly likely going to be in the neighborhood of 8 to 10. I know Penticton's a little bit of an outlier with that.
I know I was talking to Summerland and they were talking about their utilities and how much they're going to have to go up, and they were pretty worried about it. So inflation's just killing everybody.
Okay, so, the next screen I'll bring up. So this is where we calculate the different rates altogether here. So again, so this is copied right from the previous spreadsheet. So we're back to our 3.306 in municipal collections. It is subdivided slightly, and this is sort of how we figure that out. A tax shift. So this is where once we get our tax rates, if council wishes to increase or decrease a class, it comes in the tax shift. So if council tells us that municipal taxes or residential taxes are too high, we want to decrease those and increase them from business, or increase them from heavy industry and decrease them from light industry, or where things increase or decrease, it comes into that column D. That's strictly up to the purview of council, and I base that on the tax policy of the town, but if there's any suggestions there, they'll be reported to in a regular meeting or committee of the whole, so we can discuss sort of how they work. So those are the tax totals, again, after a shift, which equate to these rates. So it's important to note that Class 2 is exactly 40. By the community charter municipal tax regulations, Class 2 must, the absolute highest Class 2 can be is 40. There are a couple of municipalities that have an overly large amount of utility-based action in their tax rates that are allowed slightly more, but that's done through a special regulation through an order in council of the provincial cabinet. I'm trying to think of a good example. I think Kitimat has one, because they have a large amount of their municipality that has utilities, because Alcan draws a lot of electricity, and they're allowed to go slightly higher on their utility rate to be able to supplement the rest of their taxes.
So there's a question for you. Municipalities where BC Hydro is, they get it's like I think they call it a grant every year from BC Hydro. So BC Hydro is in our community, they just don't service the town, they service the mine. Why do we not get anything from BC Hydro?
So I will back up to the budget. So if I scroll down here, where's that cursor? There it is. So if I show these line items here, the utility tax that's generated in line 11 here, that is drawn from 1% of the gross billings that are done within the town. So TELUS, Fortis, Eastlink, anything that runs a utility within the town of Princeton has to pay 1% of their gross revenues to the municipality in tax. For everyone else, they're located in that Class 2. So if Hydro does have any operations within the municipality, they pay under a Class 2 rate.
Well, the mine is all BC Hydro.
Yeah. So if Hydro does own any infrastructure, they would be billed under a Class 2 rate.
But should we not be getting a percentage of the billing from BC Hydro then?
If the mine has gross billings from Hydro, then yes.
Well, they got a brand new electric assist that uses quite a bit of power,
Yeah.
and they updated the entire power system for it. So should we not be looking into that?
Yeah.
Do you get statements from, is it from the BC Utilities Commission that you get them?
No, it's part of the Local Government Act. Any utility that operates within the town has to report their gross billings to the municipality.
Because they've never paid.
They've never paid.
So the mine has always been, like since its inception, has been on BC Hydro, not on,
Yeah.
and it's in town for the last how many years?
Yeah, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they actually get direct billings or what the arrangement is there. But under the Local Government Act, if they do sell electricity, they have to pay the municipality. we get a statement every year from Fortis, both electricity and gas, from TELUS, and from Eastlink.
Have a meeting with.
Those are the only
Meeting with Frank
contributors.
next week.
So,
So, the mine is getting a break of 4% in terms of,
the maximum they
as
can
opposed to seven,
increase.
3 as opposed to 7,
Yeah.
as well as free hydro, 1%.
That's speculation. At this point, I'm not sure how their arrangement works. I can make a couple phone calls, but, yeah.
And it would be from hydro, not from hydro.
Yeah, it would be coming from Hydro. So BC Hydro should be paying us.
Because ultimately then, if it was being done, the regional district would have been collecting it previously.
Yes. Yeah, the regional district is governed under the same regulations.
So the mine is,
I gotta look into it.
pardon me?
I'll look into it, because they use a lot of power. A lot of power, and if we're getting 1% of, from BC,
hydro.
from Hydro,
Yeah.
they should be. I mean, you see these other municipalities getting hundreds of thousands of dollars from BC Hydro.
So, so the tax rates are derived from the tax totals over there. So after that, we move on to the column that's labeled financial burden at this point. So this column here essentially states that once we collect the taxes, we have to add the capital levy, which during the last meeting, council stated that they wanted it based on municipal property values. So that's been incorporated into this. And we also have to include the Okanagan Regional Library. So a library system is deemed a municipal service, so they have to operate under the same ratios as the municipal collection, but they aren't really a municipal collection. They're a flow-through charge. So essentially, we collect it on behalf of residents, and we submit it to the Okanagan Regional Library Board. So that number is higher, so we come up with the municipal total. That's the library collection. The solid waste total is based on, I believe it's about 3 years old. Essentially, council resolved that the solid waste deficit for the landfill be separated off of municipal taxes and added as a separate line item on the tax bills, and the capital levy. So when we calculate those back to that financial burden, it comes up with the mill rates for all 4 of those services. Again, the mine is limited to strictly municipal taxes. They pay the 3% flat, so that's why these are blank. And class 2 has to add up to 40. So the rest of the rest of these rates are based strictly on our bases. The library, the solid waste, and the capital are based strictly on the municipal rate. And that's largely how we calculate them. So I will, again, there's 2 other points I will bring up before I kind of bring my my presentation to a close. First of all, tax deferment, like Councillor Gould alluded to earlier. So this is the website. If you Google property tax deferment, in BC, it'll bring this up relatively quickly. The province recognizes that, number one, municipalities essentially only have property tax to collect to pay for their operations. There's very few operational grants available from senior levels of government. Capital stuff, yes. Operational stuff, no. Sales of service only goes so far. So the provinces understand that municipalities are based on houses, and houses are very sensitive to collection, increases in tax. So if anyone ever does have any problem paying their property tax, in the past, people, ratepayers, not just in Princeton, but around the province, the penalty is 10% for not paying by September 30th. It's 5% on 5% on September 30th. And then we go into an interest situation for year 2, a further interest situation in year 3, and if people haven't paid by the last Monday in September of year 3, the home goes up for tax sale. If it's sold at tax sale, they have an additional year to redeem all the taxes that have been paid, plus the interest that's payable to the person who buys it at tax sale before ownership changes hands. So people have 4 years to pay. In previous years, the interest has been relatively minor. The province sets interest for back taxes starting in year 2 at the prime rate through the province's banker plus 5%. So in the past, when interest rates have been 0.25%, add 5.25%, it's been a relatively low amount that people have had to pay compared to keeping debt on credit cards and such like that. Now that interest rates have started to increase, the rate that the province has set so far is 9.45%, which is starting to get on the steep side. What I would suggest is if people are having difficulty making taxes, is to use a program like this. So these 2 programs, the province has 2 deferral programs. One is for families with children, the other one is for seniors. So seniors, so the regular program is for seniors. It's for anyone over the age of 55. So to be a senior is a bar set fairly low. You know, you see seniors at 60 or 65. This program starts at 55. A surviving spouse at any age or a person with disabilities. There's a couple of criteria that you have to meet. Basically, you have to own your home. You have to have a certain amount of equity in your home to be able to qualify. But you can defer your taxes for as many years as you wish. There's no requirement to ever pay it back until you sell your home. And the province will pick it up every year in perpetuity, unless you fail to meet the requirements of the program. So the province picks up the cost of the property tax and puts a charge on the home. So if you sell the home, the proceeds are paid back to the Crown at the same rate you paid, plus an interest rate. That interest rate is prime minus 2. So in the past, so this year it'd be roughly about 2%. So you end up paying a lot less interest under a program like this than you do under a different program. The other program is for families with children. So if there's at least one child living in the home that's under the age of 18, I believe. Yeah. Or somebody who is attending college or university. Again, property taxes can be deferred in perpetuity as long as you meet the requirements of the program. It's a great program. Last year we processed 7 of these. So if people are having difficulty, the finance department really encourages people to reach out, and we can help people with these applications and take the steps necessary to assist as much as we can. The other point I will bring up just before I close is our mill rates. So again, we publish this every year when it comes to our tax rates. Since 2010, I beg your pardon, since The mill rate fluctuates. But since where did it reach its peak? 2017. If your house remains the same value, the tax has dropped on your house every year, year over year, since 2017. The last time it increased was 2016. The large thing that's driving the mill rate decreases is the fact that property values keep going up significantly. That will probably change in 2023. Largely due to inflation and due to house prices calming down a little bit, but still we are a fairly affordable municipality for municipal taxes. Right now, our tax rate we collect from homeowners is 153rd out of 161 municipalities.
Do you think it'll still come down, that number, this year?
This year, it'll probably go up slightly. This largely because I'm not sure of that number yet, but yeah, it will go up. It's the ratios probably won't work out that the mill rate decreases again this year. But we are still relatively affordable. There are options for people who absolutely have difficulty paying a property tax bill. We can find different methods. And yeah, we absolutely staff want to help people as much as we can, while still maintaining the financial viability of the municipality, which is our ultimate charter in the community charter.
Can I ask one other, if like say 2016 to 2017, do we know if there was a tax increase in that year?
I'd have to look it up. That's before my purview, so that would be perhaps in a budgetary note of some sort, but I don't have that information.
And that amount will also, like our 10%, is our municipal taxes plus will have that capital levy.
Yes, so it's important to note on here that the average tax on a home over here, $847, is the municipal average. Now, you also have to remember on a tax bill, I should probably bring this up as well, it's not just municipal taxes that get charged. The province charges school and police tax. The regional district has two different requisitions on it. They have one for their operations, and they also have one for the hospital district. So through the regional district, we contribute money to the capital costs for the hospital system in the RDOS. So that would include both Princeton Hospital and Penticton Hospital and different healthcare facilities in and around the South Okanagan. And we also contribute to the financing of the BC Assessment Authority and the Municipal Finance Authority. So that's done by provincial statute.
And we're like the lowest municipality in the regional district taxes.
Yes, we do a lot of stuff on our own. So that $847, that's what the municipality collects based on last year's rate. This year, this line item will have a capital levy attached to it, but with the average tax, a 1% increase last year would have brought an increase of $8.48. So 1% of that number. So it's important to remember that when we drop tax rates 1% or we increase tax rates 1%, the average house is really only increasing or decreasing $8.48 a year. So a 10% increase may sound onerous, especially in the days of increasing grocery prices and things of that nature. But I do caution council that without operational expenses to be able to fund what we do, we need to find cutbacks on the other side. So, we can drop it to 9%, but then we have to find the cutbacks on the other side, and it really saves people $8 a year, about 75 cents a month.
And our taxes primarily pay for, not capital.
Most budgets, it almost completely pays for operational.
Yeah.
Princeton, or the town of Princeton puts almost 0 municipal tax dollars into the capital plan.
And that's coming from grants and from sales and whatever, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's important that we explain that as well, is that it's not your tax dollar. Your tax dollars are paying for the operation of the municipality, which are your core services that we provide on a day-to-day basis, like your water, sewer, garbage pickup, et cetera, right?
I can sort of give you that number here. One moment. So in this budget, budget 2023, and we go to the capital plan, and we look. Oh, come on. There we go. I'm really working this little projector hard. Here it comes.
Must be
All
your
right.
cord.
So the taxation is $511,000. And at this point, that's assuming we complete the entire financial plan. Our tax rate is 3.306 million. So capital collections are 511 divided by 3.306. I can do that math real quick. Approximately 15% of the capital plan. That's very high for Princeton. I think last year it was about 75. And we can pretty much guarantee that the entire capital plan will not be done in 1 year. So if there's a capital object that doesn't get done, then that
But
reduces
if you
that
zoom
ratio.
out, the fire truck is coming out of taxation.
This is for 2023.
Yeah, but didn't we?
That'll be
wasn't
put into
the
reserve.
Fire truck on this year?
That'll be put into reserves. That's not part of the
I
capital
thought
plan.
we were putting the down payment of the fire truck.
We discussed order.
Yeah, this is strictly for the capital plan. If that were the case, that would be based on the operational side.
So equipment is operational.
Paying down payments is operational. The actual capital amount is included in future capital plans.
So I'm not understanding this capital isn't being paid by taxes.
There were some capital projects though that.
There's a few, but most of it is coming out of grants and,
Well,
so capital
yeah,
projects like.
that's fine. What is coming from grants, that's fine, removal. But the rest of it, in my mind, is coming from taxes.
Only 500.
$511,000 to the capital plan.
Well,
What's our
who's paying for it then?
Those grants,
I know grants, okay, like separate grants.
Yeah.
But
Most of
we
it's-
have a cost of capital besides that, right? And
Yeah.
who's paying for that? Where does it come from?
outside of that, $511,000 is paid for out of municipal taxation. The rest is paid for out of grants.
And what's our capital plan?
$32 million.
Can you go back to that capital plan we had, that taxation column?
Yep.
And just show some examples of what is paid by taxes?
Yep.
There was one that's 30,000 there, but.
Yeah. Yeah, so, hang on a second. Let me just, I'm a little bit hamstrung by the projector here, so give me a moment. Okay, so caboose refurbishment, so we couldn't find a grant for that, so that's out of taxation. Memorial Park Tennis Court resurfacing, actually, I think, yeah, so let me just break out this year.
Yeah.
23. So taxation is here. So repairs to the second bench trail, the trash can replacements, fire hydrant replacements, Rockland Avenue and Highway 3 intersection, landfill scale software, the OCP review, recreation master plan, pool boiler and cover, the zoning bylaw, wild safe plan, and the aquatic center redesign are what now sits at 511,000.
And can you go to the fire truck? Like, I know that's not on the issue, but can you just, so that we can see what this.
So the fire truck, I believe, was ladder truck for fire department. So that 933 out of borrowing, and I believe, yes, there is a protective services reserve for the rest. Fire truck at this point, I believe, is budgeted for 1.4.
And
So the down payment is assumed for this year, and then the rest would come out of
Where's it going?
would come out of borrowing at this point. But again, it's a 2024 discussion, so we can have that.
No, if we have to order that this year, or we don't get a fire truck, because it's 5 years minimum to get a fire truck.
Right.
We will not have fire protection. We will lose our fire protection if we don't have something in place. We had this conversation for the half an hour that I was here. Like, we have to figure that out for this year. One way or another, it has to be ordered this year, or we are in trouble.
So do you want me to put that as a 2023 expense?
That's why initially I said, why don't we just take it out of the mine taxation so we can pay for the down payment this year? Because we're gonna get $400-something thousand from them, and then we're not borrowing the down payment for something that we're not gonna get for 5 years.
and that mine taxation was the amount needed for that down payment.
Yeah.
That's why I wonder sometimes if we should be doing resolution. Those individual things. Because it's a lot.
So we're gonna have to do, yeah. Any other questions?
I do, but it's for James.
So the only thing that should affect is the future amenity reserve, because we're not gonna put it into the reserve this year, we're gonna use it for that, unless you've got future amenity reserve paying for other things this year.
So there you go. So that's 4 and 600,000, with another 400 out of the taxation, which pushes that to 911.
But that amount would go, be from the amount collected from, instead of that mine taxation portion going to the future revenue reserves. It, well,
Right. That's not on this sheet, but, yeah.
that's where it ultimately.
Yeah.
Is there a standing limit that is how, where it goes?
There's a policy.
There's a policy in place, yeah.
So it still goes there, but then we need to, on our reserve transfers, take it back up.
Yeah, so ultimately, the council decides on where reserves go every year. I haven't done the 2022 one yet. I'm waiting for all the bills to roll in from last year before I know exactly how much we have in reserves to transfer for 2022. That resolution for debate by council. But right now, I'm proposing that the 400,000 goes into fire department reserve from last year in 2022. And then we have the 400,000 for this year.
We have to order it, you've been putting us off.
Because is that when we have these meetings, budget meetings, we don't get to update it where things were moved again. You can move things live on your document, and then it doesn't match what we originally were all looking at. So I'm still waiting for that copy after that last meeting to see what the changes,
I did send it out to everyone, did I not?
not after the last meeting.
Did everyone get a copy of the budget after the last budget meeting?
I know you sent me one.
Yeah, I think I sent everyone one. I'll send it again.
Okay. And then the last thing we were gonna talk about was,
Yeah, so we did discuss amending, so that's PC assessment there, so I can post the phone numbers so
So
everyone
which
has
way
it.
do you want them to amend, because they've already been downgraded?
Well, apparently not all
So-
of them, so that's where I'm wondering,
Yeah,
is there an
so-
anticipated amount?
I'll pull up PC assessment's website, so.
If they run evacuation, then automatically.
So here's BC Assessment's,
Assessment does them.
so this is BC Assessment's website. If you scroll down, they do have something that says extreme weather events. Their phone number is located at under
Last year.
contact us.
Versus James and Pete.
So that's the phone number. You phone and give a phone number, they basically forward you right to the assessor.
To appeal it?
And, well, you can discuss it first, and then you can file the appeal with the person you get a hold of. However, right on the front there, they have extreme weather events. So they have a whole page for extreme weather events. It gives a lot of detail on what's happened. After talking with the assessor, BC Assessment can't remove their entire assessment. It's against the Assessment Act. So, but what they can do is if they've had a building that's significantly damaged. So it's uninhabitable, it's been destroyed. BC Assessment does not have a crack team of assessors that go through and look at every house. They don't. But what people can do is they can go forward and they can, if somebody has details on their home saying this house has been affected by a flood, it's uninhabitable, they can drop the improvement portion of the assessment down to as low as $1,000, which most houses are, even older houses can be somewhere in the neighborhood of 60, 70, 80,000. So that will significantly impact the assessment portion of it. If the assessment portion goes down, people's individual taxes go down. So if somebody has not contacted BC Assessment saying that their house is significantly damaged, they need to do so. When I took a look at the roll this year, the number of people with improvements of $1,000 was 1. So I greatly appreciate people who were impacted by the 2021 flood may not have completely repaired their homes, but there's very little as a finance manager that I can do to change taxes. But you can definitely change the assessment if the building has been significantly damaged. So if they have that contact with BC Assessment, they will send an assessor at that point out to take a look at the home, either through pictures and make a judgment through that, or with an in-person visit.
So where Mayor Coyne said that it's already been adjusted, it hasn't necessarily been adjusted for all the properties.
That's right. Yeah, the BC assessment is completely different from any of the assessments we've done through the RDOS or through EMBC. BC assessment has their own systems.
Do you have an idea of how many homes that possibly, because that could affect, if they all appeal and had it adjusted, that also affects their value.
I wouldn't have that information. It would probably be the people who were evacuated would probably be the closest list.
That's short.
Shortfall is made up with an adjustment to the mill rate. So it would be.
I'm sorry?
The shortfall will be made up by an adjustment to the mill rate. So the rest of the municipality would increase to compensate.
This, the phone number, the process and all that sort of thing is put on by the province?
That's right. Yeah, the BC
And
assessment
yet the
authority.
municipality is gonna pay the shortfall? On the other one you were talking about before, whatever the province was,
A deferment, that's a deferral.
That's a deferment, yeah.
That's not this.
but not this one.
No. If an assessment is reduced, it reduces the total assessment of the entire municipality, which would subsequently increase the mill rate slightly to compensate.
Got that?
It'll be a one-time thing? obviously,
As people come back with their homes.
right?
They have to take out building permits, and as soon as a building permit is issued, it triggers us to send the plans to BC Assessment, which is how they adjust their rates.
But this theoretically could be coming in for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years.
It's possible.
So we have those figures in order to be able to adjust what we're charging in terms of taxes.
Yeah, the system is designed to compensate for it locally.
You said only one place has,
One place was reduced to $1,000. So as close to BC Assessment could get to completely destroyed.
And the BC assessment value, is that like as of July?
So the assessments are based, always based in July for that year. So the 2023 assessments are based on value in July of 2022. So the 15% increase that they quoted is between July 2021 and July of 2022.
So it wouldn't include any new builds after July?
It would not include any new builds as of November. That's when they count. November of 21.
21?
Yeah. So, as everyone knows, February was kind of the cutoff line when interest rates started to increase. So from July to February, real estate was quite active and prices were increasing quite a bit. And then from February to July is when the softening started happening with increasing interest rates. So overall, BC Assessment has increased 15% in Princeton. Because the July to February rates are much more than the February to July amounts at this point. They have come out and said that for next year, expect a softening in rates. So,
because it wasn't softened in the assessments that I got.
not this year, next year.
No, like most people should argue the assessments, really. It's like, you know, I mean, there's prices that are crazy. There's no way it's unmatched for what it's assessed.
Any other questions? Comments? Okay, thank you, James. That's it, motion to adjourn? Thank you. Seconded by Mr. All in favor?